My name is Lyzet Mejia. It is April 2nd, 2025, and I'm sitting here with Imani Sanchez, Lucia Urdaneta, sorry, and Nicole Pantoja in La Casita. Thank you for joining me today. May I ask you to state your full name, please?
Yes, Lucia Elena Urdaneta.
Perfect. When and where were you born?
I was born in 2004 in Orlando, Florida.
Tell me about your family.
Yeah, of course. So I was born to a single mother who had immigrated from Venezuela by herself. She was the first in my family to fully immigrate to the United States and stay here and start a life for her own. But like I mentioned previously, the majority of my family is from Venezuela on both sides. And from the city of Maracaibo, Venezuela. So, yeah, and then I was born in Orlando, yes.
Awesome. What is your cultural background like?
Yeah, so I guess it was interesting navigating being Venezuelan American while my family was still, while I was growing up, the majority of my family was still living in Venezuela. So it was interesting to kind of learn my culture from my mom, and a lot of times that meant food for us. So whether it was eating arepas, tequeños, or sometimes when I was little I would get the opportunity to travel to Venezuela and stay there for a couple months during the summer. So I guess I had a lot of experience firsthand submerging myself in Venezuelan Latin American culture when I was little, because I would be able to visit. Things have been a lot different since the political situation has escalated. I want to say the last time I visited was 2012, so I haven't been able to go back, and it's been pretty difficult because while a lot of my family has immigrated here, there's still very important people that I would love to visit who I haven't been able to. So yeah.
Going more into your childhood, what cultural traditions were important to you growing up?
My favorite one was always how we celebrate Christmas, because in Venezuelan culture we have a specific dish that we like preparing called pan de jamon. And I don't know, and we also have this type of tamale called an hallaca, which is a little different, but yeah, it was always this whole strenuous activity that I remember my grandma would have to spend days before, weeks before, preparing the filling, and then also the masa that she would have to make. So I just love how we celebrate Christmas. We have our own, specifically where my family is from in Venezuela, called El Estado de Zulia. That state has a specific music genre called gaitas, and that is what we listen to towards the end of the year. We also have a special holiday that's celebrated in the city where my family is from, Maracaibo, called honoring our patron saint, Chiquinquirá. So just the gaitas, you would always hear that towards the end of the year, and that's, I don't know, it makes me I listen to them sometimes when I'm here at UF, because it's just it feels like home. It feels like I'm back with my parents and with my family. Yeah.
And growing up, how did these cultural experiences and practices impact your life?
For me, it always, growing up, I went to a lot of predominantly white American schools, and I grew up in a predominantly white area. But as I grew up, more Venezuelans started going to that area, and it's a small town in South Orlando called Hunters Creek. I remember I was my mom would listen to the Spanish radio, and at one time they would start calling it Hunterzuela, because so many Venezuelans started coming to this part of Orlando. But I always knew that I was different, in a sense, that I wasn't my other classmates, because they wouldn't come home and speak Spanish with their parents, or I don't know, I guess how I navigated my life was so different as a bilingual child, and also someone who has Venezuelan culture, because also a lot of the kids, even though I did say there were a lot of Venezuelans, there were also a lot of Latinos who were Puerto Rican. So I guess I knew I was different in terms of culture, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on from your childhood, why did you decide to go to college?
Yeah, I feel like it was something that was always expected out of me. I was the firstborn in the US, and my mom had very high academic expectations for me. She was like the valedictorian of her high school in Venezuela. She herself in Venezuela went to college, and I think she earned some sort of college degree. Her like educational journey, she's like explained it to me, but you know, she took a couple of years off, like due to student protest, and it's like a little complicated. But yeah, it was always expected of me to go to college, and I went to a high school that had a magnet program that a lot of kids took to get like good admissions into college, which was the International Baccalaureate program, the IB program. So yeah, I always was aiming like for the Ivies and stuff like that. But I always knew like it was expected out of me.
And how and why did you choose UF specifically?
Yeah. So UF actually wasn't my first choice at first. I really, like I mentioned previously, I really wanted to go to like Ivy Leagues. Like that was always a goal of mine. And as a freshman, I remember I had my eye set on Cornell. As things happened later in my progression of high school, like COVID, and other things like that, I just felt very overwhelmed with school as well, and I think that reflected a little bit like in my performance. So I don't know, I just had some self-doubt, and I was like, I think I'm gonna look to other schools which are maybe a little more in my target zone. So UF was one of those schools. I actually had a dream school of going to Barnard College, which is like a women's college under Columbia University, and I got deferred. But once I came here to UF, before I got my regular decision from Barnard, I came here to UF, and I just remember like doing my admitted students tour. I actually had a cicerone who was an active member of HSA, and I asked her about HSA, the Hispanic Student Association, to abbreviate that. But she also just showed me places. She gave me a tour that like showed, at the time I was a pre-med, like a prospective pre-med student, and she showed me like labs, and she just had like a really engaging conversation with me, and it made me feel like, oh, maybe I have like a place here. I can have like a community when I come onto campus, even though like I'm 100 miles away. So that really formed my decision of coming here to UF. And like later that day I went to, also a lot of my friends from high school were coming here. I feel like I already had like the security of a friend group. It was only 2 hours away from my hometown in Orlando, so I don't know. And then also like financial decisions. That was probably one of the biggest decisions, like bright futures being covered. But it seemed like a school where I could have a good time socially and could also like prioritize my academic achievements at the time.
And going more into your journey here at UF, what major did you decide to study and why?
Yeah, so like I mentioned previously, I applied to UF as a biology pre-med major. As I finished my IB program in high school, I started realizing that the rigor of the classes and the courses that I was taking was only going to get harder throughout college, like undergrad. And then I would have to apply to medical school, and I would have to attend medical school. And I was like, I don't think I'm like, I don't know if I'm passionate about this, because I don't know, I guess like I was just going along with what everyone else was doing at the time. But I changed to a nursing major and preview, because I was like, let me just get my bachelor's degree and make some easy money after. Then I was like, I don't think I'm that passionate about nursing either. So I guess something that my mom has always told me is, I don't care what you do, just do something that you're happy with or that you'll be happy about. So then funnily enough, I took a UF major quiz because I just felt like I had so many interests, but I just didn't know which one I wanted to pursue in reality. And I ended up getting anthropology. And I thought at the time that I had a strong background in science, and specifically in biology. And history had always been my favorite subject growing up, in like social sciences. So I thought merging those two with biological anthropology would be my perfect major. And I did that for my first year. But then I started taking more cultural anthropology classes and more Latin American studies classes. And now I've arrived to the major that I have now, which is a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology with a minor in Latin American Studies.
And as a student here, how did you find your community at UF?
Yeah. So like, I feel like I always start with like I previously mentioned. But going back to that experience that I had with an HSA alum who was my sister and who gave me the tour, she recommended me, like after that day, I went and I followed the HSA Instagram, and also during preview, they used to go into the CIME and market the early arrival programs. So that's how I learned about programs like Adelante. So then there I signed up for Adelante. I got here early to UF a couple days early. My roommate, who was my best friend from high school, she was also doing the early arrival program for Asian students called Find. So it was great because we could both be here early to school. I did Adelante. Through Adelante, I learned about programs under the Center of Inclusion and Multicultural Engagement called Podemos, which was like a professional achievement program for freshmen, for incoming students. So I did that program, and then my first HSA GBM, I learned about the Member Leadership Program, MLP, and I joined that as well. And that was when I was really nervous those first couple of meetings for MLP, but once I got there, I just felt so supported by my directors and also all the people there that I genuinely I loved MLP so much. I loved my experience so much with the people that I had there. And it just felt like for the first time, I wasn't in such a competitive academic environment like I was in high school. And I actually had people rooting for me and or feeling inspired by me, or I was feeling inspired by them. So it was just a great opportunity that made me feel welcomed. And it was just great to be surrounded by a bunch of people who are Latino and Hispanic and who I don't have to explain myself to, who just understand me.
Were there any challenges and barriers you encountered when finding a community here?
I think the biggest difficulty I've had is kind of navigating people who have similar academic pursuits as me, which I feel like has been a personal journey in of it itself. But while I do feel supported academically by a lot of my peers have different academic pursuits in terms of majors. Some of them are pre-medical, or even I thought pre-law. I thought that's what I aligned with more my sophomore year, but I just started to notice that isn't necessarily the route that I want to take. And sometimes there's been certain experiences oh, I'm an anthropology major, and they're oh, but what are you gonna do with that? What are you gonna do after? And it's just been hey, I made this conscious decision, I know what I'm gonna do, and I don't have to explain myself to you in that case. Yeah.
You've mentioned how you found the HSA. To anyone who's new, describe HSA and tell us about the organization.
Yeah. So HSA is a organization committed to providing a community for Hispanic and Latino students on campus through different avenues, like programmed events, which I'm in charge of, but also a lot of experiences for mentorship to accommodate yourself, or acclimate, that's a better word, acclimate yourself to the UF environment and just feel supported during your academic journey here at UF as you navigate university as a Hispanic Latino student, which I would argue makes your experience so universally different from any other student who's here and special to you.
And in your role in HSA, how do you foster a sense of belonging for you and other HSA members?
Yeah. Before I was elected as Vice President of Programming this year, I did serve as GBM Director. And even before then, in my involvement with MLP as just like a committee member and member relations, I've always felt a responsibility to make a welcoming environment for everyone. And how I did that for example, as an MLPer was just going up to people that I hadn't talked to in a little bit, or just sparking a conversation up with them, like when I saw them like passing by, which always put a smile on my face. As GBM director, I really wanted people to be engaged with the content that I was giving them. And I've always found interest in like socio-political, cultural issues, so that's what I really tried to implement during my time as GBM director. I poured a lot of passion into the topics that I wanted to present about. And then, and as Vice President of Programming, that's what I've been trying to do, like keep consistent with this year as well, and also maintain a good relationship with our affiliate organizations by inviting them to our general body meetings, to make sure that they feel supported and they're as much as a part of our community in HSA as they are like as a separate organization themselves.
And going more into the current political climate we're living in, can you tell us about what you know about Senate Bill 266 and or any other anti-DEI legislation?
Yeah, I remember hearing about the Senate bill as I was wrapping up my freshman year in college, which was 2023. I just remember seeing like someone post an Instagram post, and it was like a previous mentor of mine when I first got into the university that I met through Adelante and stuff like that. But from my understanding, I also categorized it as like an anti-DEI bill, which I saw as an attack on all the programs that gave me community during my freshman year. So that meant like all the programs that were housed under the Center of Inclusion and Multicultural Engagement. And I potentially thought of things that would threaten HSA as well. But from my remembering, it was like asserting discrimination against like white students. And I remember I had a really funny like experience during preview because all the people in my preview class were like not Latino. So when we got to like Salita, I was like, oh my God, this place is so cool. Like, how can a university have this? And they were like, I don't see myself using this space a lot. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. But I was just like, I guess like I never realized to the extent that it would go to. And also it was like summer was starting, so it was really hard to mobilize like against this. And I was like, oh, everything will be fine. And yeah, I guess everything was fine until I feel like our sophomore year there wasn't significant strides against it, like to implement it at UF until the summer of my sophomore year.
And from your perspective, what does this legislation necessarily mean, and what are we losing?
Yeah, so to me, it not only has threatened like programs, like university programs and departments which have given me a lot of resources as a first generation student here in the US, but it's also like threatened how we build community, and especially as like Vice President of Programming this year for HSA, it's definitely limited the amount of resources that I've had to put on events. For example, like coming in as a freshman, I felt like every event had food, and that was a big incentive because as college kids, like we don't, like it's kind of nice when you go to an event and like you can expect like a little bit of like an incentive or like a reward. So it's been really hard trying to get engagement up without providing something, and more so like just relying like on like just please come like to support us rather than like getting like free stuff out of it. But yeah, that has been pretty hard and difficult in itself. Another thing is that my studies and my area of interest and what I want to do after college is also under attack with this bill because it has attacked general education courses here at UF and limited what professors can teach. So as someone who's interested in ethnic studies and like Latino studies, Latin American studies, it's been pretty scary. I haven't experienced like much of the restructuring myself, but I know that it's affected like programs like the gender women studies like department itself by not giving them like specific like oh my god, what do we need to call it, like certain like for example the diversity, like I'm gonna call it a point because I can't remember what it's called, but on our degree audits, like every UF student had to get a diversity like credit through one thing, and now that's been erased. And I feel like it's really important for students to have these requirements, not only just Hispanic or Latino students who like their identity has influenced them to take these classes, but it also makes you aware of the experiences of other people that you've never had possibly like encountered before. So now that that's taken away, I feel like it really threatens our environment on campus, and it doesn't, I guess, push people to be considerate of other people and the experiences of other people that they may encounter.
And how did these DEI actions and rules change over the course of your academic career?
Yeah, beyond that credit that I just talked about, I feel like it's changed the amount of support that I have beyond college, because a lot of the programs that I wanted to apply to have no longer received funding, even outside of UF. Even like at now, like it felt like this past year it was like at the state level, but now with this incoming administration in 2025, now it's at the federal level. So it's really limited. Like the humanities already didn't have like a lot of resources or like a lot of funding put towards them, and now it's just like exponentially worse because it's not even at the federal level anymore. So it's been really difficult navigating what I'm gonna do when I graduate college, because it just seems like, and especially like as like a low income student, like it sucks to not be able to have like the same assurance that there's programs put in place like for that champion diversity and DEI that are gonna be able to like help students from like a lower income background attend grad school, which like only 1% of like Latinas in the US have like PhDs, so that's something really important to me. But it's scary to attack those certain programs.
And how does education inform your response to anti-DEI legislation?
Yeah, I feel like the classes that I've taken under the Center of Latin American Studies pertaining to Latino studies have really changed how I think about not only my studies, because I came into taking those classes as like a pre-law student who just wanted to go to law school after, but those classes have really inspired me with the drive of our community, and also like inspired me to, as a Venezuelan American who has had to like deal with a lot of like Latino conservatism in her family, that's something that I really want to study. And having like, I'm recently taking a class right now that is exposing me to like a book that talks all about this. So having classes like that expose me to like different opportunities, or it's just like something that I wouldn't imagine would be here at UF. Like it's something like ethnic studies like exist like majority like in California, like in Texas, but it's really important to have those classes like here at UF because we have a majority Latino population here in Florida as well. So it's been great to be able to take those classes and even like change what I want to study and like change my pursuits, not to law school, but also to grad school as well.
And as a former employee of the Center for Inclusion and Multicultural Engagement, how did that anti-DEI legislation impact your work experience?
Yeah. So I got onboarded to the Center of Inclusion and Multicultural Engagement in, I want to say, the fall of 2023. Yeah, in October. And I just remember being so excited to get into this role because I remember as a freshman, I would walk in and see people working at the desk at La Salita. And I was like, that is such a cool job. Like, they like get to sit here and like just talk to the people who come in, and also just like put on programs, like get money to put on programmed events like in the space. So I was like, I love that job. I would love to have that job and like just be like surrounded in such a pretty spot like in campus, and feel included. So I remember my freshman year, I didn't apply to that one because for some reason I thought it was like a really competitive job and that I wasn't gonna get it. So I was like, let me build experience as a receptionist. So I was a receptionist at another place on campus at the Botanical Gardens here at UF. And then finally, when they had job openings in fall 2023 is when I applied and I got the position, and I was super excited to be working there. Actually, at the time, I wanted to work at Casita, but they only had openings in Salita. But it was great. I had such a great experience there. We had a team of like ambassadors. We would have like weekly meetings and just updates and talk about like the programmed events that we were gonna put on like throughout the upcoming months. And it was great. Like I felt really close to like our associate director, who at the time was overlooking our team at the Office of Hispanic and Latino Student Engagement. And yeah, I loved my experience there up until spring, where we started to see like, or gain the sentiment that things were changing in terms of our budget. So spring, we kind of got like a word from our associate director that like budget was gonna change and we might not have the ability to put on programmed events. And then I was like, okay, we'll see what's going on. Then I think that was also the time where we started hearing more from like Ron DeSantis's front, or the state government's front, on like the anti-DEI bill. Then I got elected into my position on HSA, and I remember I like spent summer A like back at home in Orlando, and I was just doing interviews for HSA cabinet and just preparing for HSA e-board, as that was like my next step in my HSA journey. And then I came back here over summer B to take some courses, and I continued my job at the Center of Inclusion and Multicultural Engagement. And that's when I really started to see that things were going like astray, because all of a sudden there was just like, I guess there was a lack of communication. Like we saw that changes were being implemented. For example, I remember seeing like a sticky note being like, Center of like Community and Belonging, like Office of Community and Belonging, but I never had a discussion like with our like managers, like our directors, like telling us like if this is a new name that we're gonna be experiencing. And during the summer, like it's pretty chill, like not a lot of people stop by, but it was just a different dynamic, and I just felt like then more things started to come out about DEI over the summer before I even got to like my job. Our president of HSA, Matthew, he was like, Adelante just got axed, like all of our early arrival programs just got axed, and those were all under the Center of Inclusion and Multicultural Engagement. So it kept on spiraling, and obviously like I was really passionate about those programs that we had there, so I got pretty scared, and I was like, am I still gonna have a job? Like what's gonna happen to these programs? But yeah, that's pretty much like what I just remember my experience being, just not being in the loop, I guess. And not that I'm sure like my bosses like couldn't tell me what was going on, as like due to maybe like administrators telling them that, but I just remember feeling really lost and I guess a little sad, because if these programs are put for students, then why aren't we receiving like communication or like any like we have any like power in what these decisions are doing to the programs that we have and that are benefiting us. And yeah, and then one day I was working the front desk, and all of a sudden I see like a bunch of people like in professional attire like walk through the institute. They're looking at everything. I've never seen these people before, but they have like UF name tags on. All of a sudden my like one of my managers, he pulls me into his office and he was like, hey, like we're just gonna have you like resort a couple things in here, and then don't worry, like you'll still get paid for the rest of your shift, like we're just gonna have you here. I was like, okay. Then someone else, another like university official walks in and she's like, okay, we're actually just gonna send them home for today. And my manager's like, okay, just fill out like a time edit form and like we'll talk about it later, but just go home for today. And I remember as I'm walking out, I see like people rolling like facility services, like people, UF facility services, like rolling in like a red car, and I'm like, okay, what's happening? Then I want to say that was like a Friday. I come in next Monday to do my shift at the office, and all of a sudden all the decals were not there. Like we had decals that said Center of Inclusion Multicultural Engagement on like the glass walls when you first enter. All of a sudden they're not there. We had like these little designs of like I guess like Hispanic-esque art, like decals on the windows of Salita. They were all gone, and for every single office as well. And even the decal like that says like the room number and like Office of Hispanic Student Engagement, that was gone as well. Everything, the rooms were still intact inside. It's just all the marketing towards them were all gone. So it was really disheartening because I was like, hey, when was this decision made? Or like, when were we gonna be told about this? And then I checked my teams and they're like, okay, everyone's gonna be working at the institutes now. Which is Casita and the IBC. And then from there on, we just saw like a strong decrease of the amount of hours that we had. So I went from probably working either 12 or 15 hours in fall and spring semesters to working, I want to say 6, which was a big cut. I saw that a lot of people, besides the people that had graduated on my team with the Hispanic student ambassadors, a lot of them left their positions as well. And especially during fall semester, I was just confused. Like, we went forward with the name change. We had a bunch of people move into our team who, like, I haven't had experience working with before. We had one of the directors of like the offices leave right before, I think this was right before like summer started, or like in the middle of summer. There was just a lot of changes to the team. They were trying to find the director for the office as well, for the Office of Community and Belonging. But I just felt out of the loop, and I also, we obviously didn't have a budget anymore. So we didn't put on programmed events, and really our job at ambassadors was just watching the desk and making sure people sign in. So I just remember feeling really confused, and I also witnessed like the person like who was like in charge, who hired me, who like onboarded me, like he no longer was in the position, and he was a really important like figure, like I guess like in my work environment, or like it was really nice to have him as like one of my staff members, because I feel like I could like trust him, or I always felt like my work at the center was like I felt supported. He built a very good like work culture, and he transitioned to another role in UF, no longer with us, so it was really disheartening. Also, the associate director who was working with our team before we transitioned into the Office of Community Belonging, I like barely saw her anymore. A lot of times I was here working Casita without like any staff member, because a lot of staff members were still in the rights union. So I just felt very disconnected, and a along with other troubles like with HSA and also like things like in my own academic journey, I just no longer felt like I wanted to work here anymore, and that's what led me to no longer working in this position. And yeah, in this semester I haven't worked at the institutes anymore, but I have seen that they've have started to implement changes. Like, for example, they are starting to do more programmed events, but obviously due to new legislation they can't have it catered to a specific community. But yeah, I still have some friends who are a part of the ambassador team here. But yeah, I think summing up my experience towards the end, I just no longer felt supported as an ambassador. And I wish communication was a little bit more clear.
And based on this experience, what is the relationship between the university and HSA in light of the new anti-DEI legislation?
Yeah, I remember when we did have a transition meeting when we were coming in, because obviously not all the ambassadors could come work during summer and see everything, the whole changes that were being happened. So we did have a transition meeting at the beginning of fall, and they kind of explained to us what had happened and how they're trying to adapt to the new legislation that they have. And basically the sentiment that we got was just, we as university, people who work for the university, we have to adhere to what the law says. But you guys are still students, and you guys can still do things and organize, and you could still call, even though if it's not officially called salita, you guys can still call it salita. But it was really tough because we had to look for other resources and stuff like that, and no longer have the support or the budget or the money that the university was giving to us. So it was all these responsibilities which were now being discarded by the university were put onto us. And significantly, throughout semesters, we significantly get less money through HSA. So yeah, that's been the sentiment. Just the university's sorry, we can't do this anymore. We just have to do what the law says, and But you guys can still put this on while we're still I feel our e-board has talked about this a lot. We're still students. We're worried about doing well in our classes, about keeping the responsibilities that we've already had in HSA beforehand, and now we're getting all of this put on us. Obviously, we're gonna do it because we care about these programs, but it gets really stressful and extenuating to lose that whole system of support that we once had. And it's even infuriating because these programs aren't harmful. They don't harm anyone. We don't force anyone to come to these programs or anything if they don't feel safe. We're not, and even if people do come, we've never been aggressive towards them. We've always been welcoming to them. If anything, we're glad that people want to engage with us and support us as well. So it's infuriating to see how this culture war has been used by politicians in order to take away things that have made our university stronger. To me, it's really changed my perception of UF. I used to love this university a lot, and one of the biggest deciding factors was how we had a home on campus for Hispanic, Latino students, for all minority students on campus. And now with the constant lack of communication, just the disregard for the response towards DEI, it's really changed how I feel about UF. And obviously I still go here as a student, and I'm grateful to have this opportunity to go to college and to get a degree, but sometimes it doesn't make me feel proud to be a Florida Gator. Because it feels like the university isn't prioritizing it or just sticking by the law without trying to support us in any way or have conversations with us.
And going more into specifics, what has HSA been doing in response to this anti-DEI legislation?
Yeah. First, I want to recognize all the work that our HSA president has done, and also our director of our Office of Political Affairs, our executive director, Imani Sanchez, because I think without the leadership that they have had during this past year, I think a lot of our programs would have crumbled, and we would have lost a lot of engagement. And that in itself has been pretty hard to do, but like even doing things like this, like oral histories, or putting on museum nights, even putting on like the initiatives for like State of the Association to make sure our community is like being informed with everything that's happening. I think we would have lost a lot of our community during this really tumultuous time. Even like putting on our own rendition of Adelante with like less than like 2 months notice, I really appreciate that Matthew spearheaded that. I guess in my role, what has been most important to me is just continuing to put on events, even if I may not have a food budget, even if I may not have a decoration budget. Using space itself, like in it of itself, to me is like showing that our community is here and you can't get rid of us. You can defund us, you can take away our money, but like at the end of the day, we're still going to be putting on events, and I'm still going to be carrying out my job with my directors that I like was elected to do, even if I may not have a budget to do so. So I feel like continuing those events and just trying to engage like our members a little bit more has been my priority as vice president of program, and specifically trying to tie in. To me, I want to, like, my whole platform when I was running for, like, this position was being intentional. So every single event this year, I've really tried to make sure that, like, there's something that sticks with people when they leave, or something that relates to what we're currently going through. Because I'm not going to talk about, like, I'm not going to talk about, like, something to... I don't know how to phrase this. I just want to make sure that everything's intentional, that we aren't ignoring the issues that we're facing right now, and that we're talking about it, and that people have a space to talk about things like that. Like, for example, I know, like, the day after the election, when I was still working at Casita, I texted in our WhatsApp, and I was like, hey, if anyone wants to come and, like, just talk about or just have a space to, like, debrief, like, just come to Casita, I'll be on shift here, and, like, I just want to make sure that people have those spaces to, like, to vent, to rant, to cry, to just express themselves in, like, a place where people can understand and feel them. Because, like, if I were to do that in one of my classrooms, I'm sure I wouldn't have felt, like, as supported. So, yeah.
And how does having the burden of keeping HSA going and supported during this time make you feel as a student?
Yeah, it's a lot. I've had, I'm definitely not going to say it was like an easy road, like doing vice president of programming, because in addition, not only am I doing this extracurricular like role where I'm like a board member and I have to oversee a team of like 6 people and also put on like a bunch of events throughout the year, and it seems like there's an event after an event and after an event, and it just never seems to stop. Beyond doing that, what has affected me a lot this year is my own personal mental health, because not only is it seeing what happens to HSA, but like I mentioned like previously, it's also what happens to my career pursuits. And this past couple of months, it's been what happens to my family, as an immigrant, as a child of immigrants, and as a family who, like I mentioned previously, like I have started to come here, but now we're facing a lot of challenges. So it's been really hard to balance and get used and do school and do just everything while we keep on getting more and more attacks at another level of government right now. But yeah.
And what do you wish people understood about the dynamics that you're working under?
I wish that people would just have more empathy. There's 2 spectrums. there's like two dynamics or polarized positions that I see people are at. One is that I feel like these government officials who are using this culture war as like a distraction from other important problems to divide people, there has to be like some sort of empathy to put yourself in the shoes of other people. And on the other hand, I feel like we get inundated with so many bad things that are happening, like anti-DEI, like at the state and federal level, that we just have apathy towards what's happening, and it leads to a lot of inaction. And there's also some people who want to see us like do these radical changes and like immediately, or they don't see the amount of work that our organization has been putting in to change, to make sure that we still have Adelante, that we still keep on the programming that we have. There's been just been a lot of like issues on that front, and I wish that people would just have more sympathy and empathy and realize what everyone is like going through, if that makes sense.
And how does HSA inform its members and its broader community of the changes that are coming and how they're impacted?
Yeah. Beyond like, I guess like in the programming sense, that is up to like our general body meetings where we just present any updates that we have going on in our community. So for example, the elimination of like the Hispanic Latino student welcome assembly. That was something that we informed like GBM members about last week or a couple of weeks ago before spring break. But beyond that, our second GBM of the semester was in collaboration with our Office of Political Affairs, which informed our community about what resources they can take as we're facing federal changes to immigration. And we've been trying to use our platform like on Instagram to make like infographic posts that inform our community about like the changes or like how we are responding as an organization, not only to the changes that our community is facing on campus, but also in Florida and in the United States as well. So we've just wanted to make sure that we're becoming a voice for people, or also like a source of information or a source of support for people during these times.
And beyond HSA, what has HSA's relationship looked like with other cultural organizations?
Yeah, I feel very like honored in a sense to have been able to work with a lot of affiliate organizations this year, like MASA, PAS, LAWEB, Ascendance. Like we've just had a lot of engagement with affiliate orgs for our general body meetings because we've been trying to do collaborations and just give them like a spotlight as well during our time. It's been great to not only like make friends like with some of like the board members from these other organizations, but also like reconnect. For example, I had a friend who was an ambassador at the center. We worked together, and she's the president of WIPA, of like the Union of Puerto Rican Students here on campus. And it was great to just talk with her again and just reconnect and show that it's not only the people involved in HSA who want to protect DEI and all the programs that we have under, but it's also our affiliate community who are very interested in backing and like supporting us, and also making sure that we give them their spotlight as well.
And what about HSA's relationship with alumni? What do you often hear from alumni?
Yeah, I think I was recently talking about this with some of my HSA friends, but I feel like a lot of alumni are obviously receptive to the changes that we're facing at the university, and I know on some of like the Instagram comments that we got, a lot of them were like, how can we help? How can we donate? Because obviously like these were very pivotal programs to them as well during their time in college, and they really shaped like their college experiences. We have like people who are probably like past executive directors of these programs who saw these like programs as their babies. and also like founders like of MOP, for example, who came here to UF to meet with our own like executive directors and stuff like that. So I feel like alumni, they really want to help us out, and also connect with us, and just make sure that we're feeling supportive while also like trying to give us advice, because obviously they've been here during very tumultuous times as well. I remember during the time, like during the Boot the Braids protests, like, or people who came here during 2012 when like kids from the Trail of Dreams came here to UF and founded Chispa. So there's people who are here to support us, and who want to support us during this time, because obviously they now feel like the attacks against DEI at the federal level, like across the nation now, no matter if they're not in Florida or at UF anymore.
And what do you wish the general public or people who are not intimately involved in HSA knew about what was happening?
Yeah, I feel like something that one of my professors told me that really changed how I think about the situation is that he told me that it's not that people don't want to be a part of like our organization or not be a part of our efforts. It's just that they simply don't know what's happening. And honestly, I could see how, like, if you're not a part of our community, if you're not a part of HSA or any of, like, the big 9 cultural orgs that we have here on campus, it could be hard to see those changes. Like, maybe you've never walked past the second floor of the Rights, or you've never seen the 2 buildings behind LibWest or, like, known about anything that they're about. So obviously there's this disconnect in information. And also, if you're an incoming freshman, you don't know the level of the programs that we used to have, without like our efforts to try to reestablish them, because DEI has like changed how we can put out information, especially like on listservs, like university listservs. Like I mentioned previously, like in preview we would go to the second floor in the CIME. Now that doesn't exist there. I think I heard that even before the CIME was gone, that preview staffers stopped visiting that floor or talking about it. So that really stops like the communication or the knowledge that people have about these programs. But yeah, I wish that the general public would, I guess like as Latino students, I feel, or like any minority student, reach out to these groups. Like we promise we don't bite or anything like that, but reach out to these groups, support your community during these times, like find ways, especially if you're gonna champion your identity, like see how you can support our community during this time. And also see how it's not only happening at a federal level, it's been happening here at UF, it's been happening here at the state level. So yeah, just also looking to our page, we've made a bunch of like posts over these things as well, and we're actively doing initiatives to combat this.
And based on your journey here and your experiences, what does resistance look like to you?
Yes, this word, resistance. When I think of resistance, I think about taking up space, and I think about using physical space. And to me, Casita and Salita have been really important spaces to have like a spatial understanding of our importance and like the legacy that has been left with us through the pursuits of other students before us, Latino students who have come before us, and also Black students who have come before us. So I think there's so much significance to these 2 buildings, to the whole floor that we had on the CIME, that we had at the CIME, because to me, like I said previously, it demonstrates the legacy, the commitment, the responsibility that previous students had before us to fight to give us these spaces. And it genuinely, it scares me a lot that of the possibility that these spaces might not exist anymore. And it makes me angry how other people think that these spaces can advertise anything else other than community belonging, a space for like programming, because that's genuinely like not what these spaces don't do at all. So, could you restate the question?
What does resistance look like to you?
Yeah. So to me, it's just keep doing what I'm doing. Like, to me, a lot of people tell me, I don't know what you're gonna do with anthropology and Latin American studies. And to me, it's like, if no one's gonna do this work, if no one's gonna be interested in this, then who is? Like, it has to be me. Who else is gonna keep these programs alive? And I know there's a lot of risk as a low-income student, as someone whose parents have never gone to grad school before. I'm the first in my family to go to an American university. But I feel like I've just been through so much, and I've witnessed so much that who says that I can't go on to that other step as well. And if I'm not there to represent my community through Latino studies, then who's gonna write our story? Who's gonna write our history? Who's gonna be representing us? Who's gonna be thinking of theories? Who's gonna be putting like our own histories on paper? So resistance is showing up for my community, making sure that my community has a space to vent. I don't know, I'm just thinking about that moment that we had like after the election a lot. That was resistance to me. To use these spaces for, I guess, a source of discussion to see how we're going to protect our community or just even support our community through these times.
And what are your hopes for any incoming classes and Hispanic students?
Yeah. My hopes are that, like I mentioned earlier, like you engage with your community, because really what we're here to do is just to provide like a safe space for people on campus, and like I mentioned previously, like a place where you don't have to, I guess, explain yourself to other people as much as like other classmates that you may have. I hope that incoming students realize the work that we're trying to preserve of previous students that have come before us, and also honor all the sacrifices that have been put by previous students to get us these spaces that we have here today. So yeah, looking up hsa.uf on Instagram and just following us and like becoming a part of our community, because I know if so many people like didn't tell me like, oh my god, I'm here for like all the people that are around here, like I wouldn't obviously like promote HSA or anything, but like genuinely, like to this day I owe like everything to the Hispanic Latino community here at UF.
So this is the end of our questions. Do you have anything else you want to say before we end?
Sure. I'm just thinking a lot right now about the legacy that's been left with us, with these students, and I hope that I'm just very thankful for the work that's being done by our students on campus, and yeah, I ask for empathy from everyone and to see the work that everyone has been putting in to protect and preserve these programs, because they wouldn't be here if they weren't worth fighting for. So yeah.